Women are communicating guidance on safe and secure humanitarian assistance, including the design and management of evacuation centers. Women are communicating the need to ensure the specific needs of nursing mothers, children, persons with disabilities, as well as the elderly. And they must be also accounted for when it comes to leadership. So to discuss integrating gender and our experiences into disaster risk management and responses, we have Inise Ndawai. Inise is the president of the Sikituru Women's Club. We have Yasmin Khan, president of the Wailua Lively Women's Club. Salai New Nikomo of the Rainbow Women's Network, and Padmani Nathan, the treasurer of the Navakai Multiracial Women's Club. Welcome to all of you. We were just listening to some of the experiences, particularly the floods going back a few years. So maybe if I could start with you, Inise. You live in Sikituru village. Just recently, in fact, January 2014, across Fiji, everyone was coping with floods. What have your experiences been like, particularly, not just this year, but it's almost like just as you're recovering, there's another flood?
Good question, Sharon. I remember in 2012 we had this big flood, and it took us Nadi by a storm. And we have this flood on a Friday, and it comes in again on a Saturday. But which is a good thing, we have this DISMEC committee in our villages here in Nadi, and many of them are just hard-working people, and it's a priority in the village that we have these elderly people. They are moved in first from their homes to our community center. Looking back in the year 2012 and back here in 2014, we have known and we have seen, and we know what to do, and the people, especially in the village where I live, they know what they're doing, and special priority to them. They get this elderly first and the disabled first to our community center.
So is your evacuation center in the village?
It is. We have one evacuation center in the village. It's a big community hall, and we regard that as a community center because it's still high enough for us to go there.
Okay, thank you. Inise, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the strategies and lessons learned from Sikituru's DISMAC committee. Yasmin, when we met in January, you told us that you had been driving around with a hailer in the Wailua community, which is very vulnerable to flooding. But the only thing you didn't have were gumboots. So what's the change been like? Because several years ago when we were talking about flooding, we visited your home. You weren't organizing in that way. So what's been the difference?
Now that after we have done this week's workshop, we are quite able to cater our people, and we have that knowledge to keep our people safe. We have identified a evacuation center, and the most bad thing is that the evacuation center where we are located, it is quite far from here. By the time we know that the flood is coming, the road to our evacuation center is already flooded. So it's very hard for us to reach there. So we request the government if they could step in and identify a lane in our community for an evacuation center would have been a big help to us.
Okay. Otherwise, what kind of early warning, how much time would you need and your community need to be able to get to the evacuation center before the main road, the main access road becomes flooded?
Actually, we need 2 or 3 hours before, because after we have done our training, we are told that if you see 2 hours of complete rain, so you should get prepared for the flood, pack your stuffs ready, like food items. In fact, from the day we did our workshop, we have always prepared our kit ready, like the food rations, medical supplies, and everything is ready there in our homes, but we just keep on rotating it. So the things there don't go bad, and then we can use it during disasters.
Okay, so this 2-hour timeline that you talk about, Do you think that at the local level or within the communities it needs to be adjusted, given that access is going to be an issue? 2 hours for somebody living close to the evacuation center is completely different for 2 hours somebody that doesn't even have a car, or needs to cross several roads or cane access roads.
Actually, the roads are good and people are helpful there. So I think 2 hours is enough for us in our community to reach to our evacuation center.
Okay,
Yes.
but you need to monitor the rainfall.
Yes.
So 2 hours of non-stop rain.
Non-stop rain, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Yasmin. Mani, you're the treasurer of the Navakai Multiracial Club. Navakai is pretty vulnerable also to flooding. What was your experience like looking back at the floods? What was the worst experience? I understand one year you were away overseas. How were you trying to make sure your family and your community were coping?
Sure. It's like everyone knows that Nadi town is a flooding town. So the areas near Nadi town like Wailoalo, Navakai, Dinrao and Navaka, these areas are the worst flooding areas. So we every time go through these floods, and the 2012 flood was our worst one, and we really had the hard time that time. And my family has survived, and they were in the boat for 2 days until the flood gone down.
So they evacuated, but not to an evacuation center on land, but into a boat, which you said you were lucky you had this boat.
Yeah.
Because I remember in 2012 there were a lot of people who were ringing up and sitting on roofs and trying to get to an evacuation center. What did they pack? How did they survive?
Like they took some food stuff in the boat, and also the clothing, so that they'll be safe for 1-2 days like that. They spent 2 days there, and after then they, like during the flood time, the water also shut down. So we have to wait for the water to clean the house and stuffs in the house.
How long did the cleanup take?
It's like more than a week.
So obviously having to evacuate from home means the water was in the home. That 2012 flood really cut through a lot of villages as well, didn't it? And he said, how bad was it for Sikituru?
2012 in Sikituru, it was, I would say, it was bad. Because in so many years past, we haven't had this experience we had in 2012. Because many of the houses were down. In my village in Sikituru, we had only 3 houses left, and the rest of the homes were in our community center. So
only 3
houses left in my village left, so the rest are underwater. So with this committee we had, and with the help of the boys, very young boys, they managed to take many of us. As I said earlier, we have these 2 times flood coming. One was on a Friday and one was on a Saturday. So we had these hardworking boys and this hardworking committee that they managed to take the elderly first, and then the women, and then the children. So we have experienced this flood as it was the highest in the past years in Nadi. And we said, and many of us, we talk about it because this was the flood that took us by storm, I would say.
Yes.
In 2012. Yeah.
I mean, clearly one of the lessons learned, and we worked together in our Nadi network after the floods in 2012 and developed an action plan and a set of recommendations that went to our divisional planning office, for example. What kind of information, looking back at 2012 and even like this year in January, what is the kind of information you personally need to receive to be able to mobilize? So, as you said, evacuation, early response is so important. What is the information you rely on? Where are you receiving information? How can information be better relayed to you? Maybe I'll start with Salai, because we kind of had this discussion. What is the kind of information we need? Because sometimes it's just too technical.
I think the community needs to be advised on how long we will start. When we should start decorating the community. I think we'll probably need more than 2 hours in order to be fully decorated and go into the decoration centers.
So we need early information. And does that need to be, so for example, we're here in Nadi, do you think you need specific information for Nadi community, not just sort of national level information? And are people listening to the radio, or is it SMS information that you need?
By phone, and we report the matters to the district officer and our advisory councillor as well.
How important is radio then at this time?
Well, we're talking about information there, Sharon. We have this siren. We have one siren here in Sikitu, that's Sikitu and Absenia. As soon as the siren is up, that's when we know that the high of the water is up. That's when we started moving around. So that's one thing I appreciate the government and the NGO for this, because even though if we haven't heard from the radio or by phone, the siren is there and we know what to do. We have to get out of the house, take our belongings, whatever needed to be taken, and straight to our community center.
Is the siren working for all of you? Yes? So each of you have sirens in your communities and you know this has to happen?
Actually, there is one that is situated in Narewa, that is covering the Wailoloa, Navukai, and Matintar area as well.
Siren will work?
Siren, we have to leave our houses because the water is too high. So for safety, we have to leave us.
So that's sort of talking about reducing the risk, how we manage ourselves during or before the cyclone. Let's talk about, the rehabilitation. So we know that there's usually a huge cleanup afterwards. But we also know, because of the reliance on food gardens, a lot of the gardens are along the riverbank. In Wailoaloa, the saturation of salt from the ocean comes in during the high tide. It's affecting, your crops as well. What's the kind of crop rehabilitation and food security program you think needs to be thought about, as a result of all of these experiences? Yasmin?
Yes, actually we should be prepared to see that the earliest what sort of crops that we can plant, and we get it quickly. And before the disasters, we should always keep some sort of crops ready. So we should store, we can dry up the old dalos, cassava, and pumpkin, even tomatoes. We can dry and pack it up beforehand. So it will be easy after the floods. We'll be ready with the food ration.
Is this something that women are doing or your clubs are doing? How did you cope, Padmani? How did your family cope, after the flood? What was your crop rehabilitation or food security plan?
Plenty of people plant cassava and dalo over there, and some of the people they just rely on the marketing, and
but then there's not much food in the market after floods, right?
Yeah.
Inisef?
Yeah.
Where I come from, like name village of some, I can name, we have Sikituru and Absenia and Moala and Korbuto. Those are the flood places, flood-prone places, yeah. And many of the villages here, when the flood comes, straight away when the flood goes down, they take whatever is been damaged. And at the same time, as I said, we have learned from the years that we have facing this flood. And straight away they've been planting, like cassava and dalo. And
But isn't Kumala faster to grow?
Yes, it is, yes. But I think Kumala will be the third crop to grow.
Okay.
The first one will be cassava,
Okay.
and then dalo, and then Kumala. Yes. Those are sort of the three ones that we can do straight away to take us after the flood.
So you're
Yes.
planning for the long
You're
term, and
planning
then
from the long
Kumala is
term.
growing because
Yes,
it's going to
yeah.
grow faster.
That
What
goes
about
faster.
green vegetables?
Green vegetables, we have bele, and we have legumes like baingani, and then we have some other, but those other two ones, like we have bele and baingani, that can be, we grow that faster because that doesn't take long for us to use in our everyday use.
Do you need to have special community gardens away from the flood-prone areas to be growing food? I'm just wondering, is that something you've thought about, Yasmin?
Yes, definitely. We should have some gardens on a higher ground, and then like we from the club, all the women can go there, do our hard work there, and then we can get that food ready during disasters.
Like as I said, Sharon, like here in Nadi, we live in a delta area. We do not live in the highlands like in Nausori, but we have no choice but plant where we are beside our houses or beside the cane fields. So we have no choice, but that's where we plant. Though we have expectations on floods every year, but that's what we do on our everyday life. You know, we have to plant.
That's where your land is.
That's where our lands are. Yeah.
Padmini, do you and your family and your community in Navakai, or does the Navakai multiracial women's group?
We don't have. We have just we do the gardening in our backyards. It's overcrowded there. People don't have much space to do the gardening. We can do a little bit like baigans and bali, all these things, but like cassava, we have to have big space or like that. So we have suggested for one land to do the gardening during our workshop, but still we didn't receive any answer.
Okay. Which brings me to the point of who's listening to you. I mean, and where are you as women leaders in your community in the decision-making process around disaster risk management, responses and the food, particularly the food security issue. Inisa, I understand now that for Sikituru village, you have a woman who heads the disaster committee. That's a big step, no?
That is a big step, yes. In our community, like in the district level, we have meetings like once a month on the 4 villages, as I mentioned earlier, Sikituru, Avsania, Moala, and Koruhuta. Here we women come together and we put in our views. What are the women doing on this certain day and this certain month? And we put all our ideas together and see what they have done. And now we see in that district level, we've seen that many of these women, they work very hard. They know what they're doing from the past floods. They know what they do. And I appreciate the women of Nadi. And even though we had this flood coming, they stayed firm in where they are and what they do. And I think I haven't come across so many hardworking women where in the different homes where they come from, they know what to do when disasters strike.
So do you think there needs to be greater recognition of what women are doing and the responsibility women take around natural disasters? I see you nodding.
Yes, we do.
Do we have enough women in decision making around this issue?
Actually, not at the moment. I think more women should step in by themselves and show that they can do something. When I can do it, I think more women can do that too.
Right. Do you think there's a need to remind the district officer or the town council that when these committees are organized, have 50-50, have equality?
Obviously they should have more women.
Yeah. Salai, younger women, are they participating in the decision making around natural disasters, particularly in the planning and management of the responses?
Yes, Sharon, I think younger women should involve themselves more into organizations, to help their communities during disasters, especially flood. Remember?
How could you get more young women involved? Because there are a lot of young women who are busy at work.
Yes, maybe by forming organizations in the community, like CBMC. Maybe we should advise younger women to be more involved in our communities, yes, during disasters.
Okay, Padmani, have you been able to participate in the Navakai Disaster Management Group or Committee?
They are men in the disaster committee, and there are no women. So we want to have a woman also. We are talking about it, so that we can work together with the men, and as well as we have the advisory counselor. He is also helping our community.
But like you said, all men. So
Yeah.
without having women in decision making, obviously the needs of women are not going to be met. The needs of children may not necessarily be on the checklist. What is the difference that has been made, Yasmin, as a result of members of your club participating in the kind of training? What's the difference that you're experiencing in Wailoa that maybe Navakai needs to learn from?
I just came across to my training and he said that they all men there. But to tell you the fact, I've got a disaster committee in my community, which is a 13-member committee that has about 4 men in that only. The rest are all women. And I tell you, they are really active. They are really active here. They think about their household. They just go around. I was the first one moving around in the community, asking people if they needed help. But unfortunately, we didn't have any boots. I was just walking with my slippers on, and with that hailer, calling people around and telling them that they have to move out now, because I saw some of the houses were already flooding.
Okay,
so that's the difference.
So next steps, I mean, we're talking about, or the reality is, 2 steady hours of rain can make a difference in our lives and in our communities. So next steps, we can't just, no longer is it cyclone season is a particular part of the year. Next steps and recommendations, Inise, for better inclusion, disaster risk management and responses.
Just a recommendation, I would say, I remember in March, we had this district meeting in our village, and we highlight that out if we can have a boat, a fiber boat in the village where we are. And then turn around, they all said if we need one. And then the district officer said, why do you need a boat? And then the whole year you're going to sitting there idle. And then by the whole time you will use it. But the thing is, it's a recommend that we need, the whole of Nadi, it's a prone flooding area. I would recommend, I would say we need a couple of boats. We have government stations here that the boats can sit there and be looked after by the government people. So when the siren comes, the flood comes up, the boats are there straight away. I would recommend if they can do something about it. Well, it was put down in the district meeting there, was not taken up by the DO. But I think that's one of the things that we needed, the fiber boats for the villages here in Nadi. Maybe it's a reason it's lying there for the whole year, won't be used. But
well,
at the end of the time,
fishing, right?
Yeah, it can be for fishing, yes, for a couple of months. Yeah, I think it was not taken was taken lightly. I think that's what needed in the Nadi Delta here. If we have about a couple of boats sitting there at the government stations when the siren is up, people here at the end of the day.